What are the best Kizuna exclusive legends in One Piece Treasure Cruise? Let's discuss all of them. We currently have 13 available, and let's rank them in a tier list. Always have in mind, of course, especially if you are new, that the tier list for One Piece Treasure Cruise can always fluctuate depending on content, so even a legend from tier B might be better than a legend from tier S if the specific content you want to clear is right for that legend. We are going to try and generalize things here as much as possible, of course, to rank all of the Kizuna legends in the game. So without further ado, let's get to it. We are going to talk about them in chronological release order, and I think the tiers are pretty self-explanatory. First up, we have Sanji and Pudding. I will place this unit in the A tier. It is one of the very few units in the game that can completely remove an enemy's defensive effect, actually two of them, damage reduction and threshold, and that is exactly why they are an extremely strong unit if you do need their utility. If you don't, you are simply going to use something else in majority of cases, and that is why I am not going to place them higher. Their captain ability and swap are kind of outdated at this point. They are decent sustainers, I guess, and they can still provide a color affinity boost with a decent multiplier for fighters and cerebrals if you do need it. The second Kizuna legend is Bez and his crew. I will place this unit in the A tier as well, a place above Sanji Pudding. I did consider putting them in the S tier, but the reason they stay A is because these days a lot of the debuffs they can remove actually appear for 6 or more turns, and their removal is for 5 turns. They are a great utility unit though. They can manipulate slots, deal with 5 turns of special bind, threshold and damage reduction, and also provide a 2-turn attack boost for driven units, which is great because if extended, it can be carried over through stages and sometimes can even survive through intimidation. Generally, the driven class has become way better now than it was when this unit was released. Their swap is not the best, kind of outdated at this point, but their captain ability makes the entire crew immune to blow away, which can be very strong if needed, but of course a very niche utility aspect. The next legend is actually the reason I separated S and double S. We have Ace and Sabo. I will place them in the double S tier, easily one of the best Kizuna legends in the entire game. Maybe I should have done the same thing with Nami and Karina for treasure map legends, give them their own tier. And I don't know yet if we're gonna put more legends in double S, but Ace and Sabo are just incredible. They can remove Despair from the Ace side and Special Bind from the Sabo side as captains. They provide a very good universal color affinity boost with their super swap and a full board of matching slots, not going through block slots though, but they do have the ability to manipulate block slots from their special. They can also deal with 5 turns of bind, despair and special bind, and provide an ore boost to shooter and free spirit units. If a Luffy is in the crew or attached as support on this character, they extend the duration of the ore boost to 3 turns, which is great. Definitely one of my favorite legends in the entire game, and one of the best, if not the best, Kizuna legend. The next legend is Toki, and this one is such a tricky one to actually place in the tier list. Because of how unique and helpful she can be, I think I will place her in the S tier. With all the units we have nowadays that can deal with debuffs from their captain ability, I feel like I haven't used Toki in a while. But that is definitely not because the unit is bad. She also does not appear in different filters you can have in One Piece Treasure Cruise, so maybe I just forget about her. But the fact that she can provide an attack boost and an ore boost and completely protect your captains or 2 units in the crew in general from essentially every debuff in the game is very strong. We also see now units that provide great attack boosting and ore boosting for the entirety of the crew, so maybe that's another reason she's not being used a lot. And now with more and more Super Sugofest legends coming out that can provide great boosting, but at the same time also want access to their EX Super or Super Type / Super Class abilities, maybe Toki doesn't fit in different teams. On the other side though, we now see more buffs being relevant outside of the usual attack boost and ore boost, like chain boundaries, chain growth boosting, base attack boosting, and conditional attack boosting these days for sure. Toki is still definitely valuable, and without a doubt one of the most unique units we have ever seen in One Piece Treasure Cruise. Next up we have Kaido and the lead performers. I will place this unit in the B tier. One of the most underwhelming Kizuna legends in my opinion. Every time I feel like I can possibly use this unit, while team building I simply drift away from it because I can find better options. The fact that they are centered around the color affinity boost also does not help them, and it's not a universal one like Ace and Sabo's coming from the super swap, it is a specific one for strength, Q and powerhouse units. I would say for majority of the things they do, they are either too restrictive or just not great and you prefer using another unit. Even for their special cooldown reduction, they provide one turn of it, but they can't resist special rewind as a crewmate, and even though they can get their special maxed out by their super swap, that needs 8 swaps to max out, quite a lot for what they provide, and then the special cooldown reduction from the special is just like the color affinity boost, specific to strength, Q and powerhouse units. For them to be your special cooldown reduction unit to help you with special rewind, you need to have a very specifically built team around them. Their end of turn damage from the captain ability is fine to deal with resilience, but they are not the best captains. And even though you can plan accordingly to use their special multiple times, most likely twice in a quest by using their super swap, I simply don't think it provides your team amazing value. Next up we have X Drake, who is easily an S tier unit. The thing with him is that as captain he can resist special rewind for 10 turns, and these units will always have value because special rewind can be a very annoying debuff to deal with, especially if it is present for example with special bind or bind, and if the unit that you have providing special cooldown reduction as a crewmate does not apply it to everyone, it can just be a hassle. So having a captain that resists it is awesome. On top of that, Drake can provide an attack boost for striker and powerhouse units, only for one turn but with a very decent multiplier, and he can also provide chain boundaries if your captain is a striker or a powerhouse. His super type is a bit underwhelming and weird at the same time. Since he's a Kizuna legend and he can resist special rewind already from his captain ability, why does he provide special cooldown reduction from his super type? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, especially because in Kizuna you get your specials reduced at the start of the quest anyway. But I guess he can also make Dex and Q slots beneficial for striker and powerhouse units. The buff only lasts one turn though, so it is definitely on the weaker side of buffs because it also cannot help you avoid a similar debuff in the final stage of a quest, and at the same time it is very niche because even if you can't manipulate your slots with a special because let's say that action is interruptible, then you need the specific situation that you are going to have Dex or Q slots. Overall, his super type is the weakest part about this legend. Next up we have Boa Hancock. I will place here in the lower end of the S tier. I would say that she falls under the similar category that a lot of Boa Hancock units do. They do provide the Petrify and Melo unique mechanics to Boa, but are they useful all the time? Are you gonna use them a lot? Not really. So why is she in the S tier? Well, first of all, she's a decent strength shooter and free spirit captain, making slots matching from her captain ability, which is always good, and then she can provide an attack boost and a color affinity boost for these two classes and the strength color, and both of these buffs are able to be maintained in different stages. The color affinity boosting is from her super type and lasts for 3 turns, and then the attack boost does not leave the crew until we take 3000 damage. One of the first, if not the first unit that actually introduced this mechanic, and if you actually need her color affinity boosting, she can be very helpful to provide damage in 2 different stages of Kizuna, something that can be valuable because it also allows you flexibility with your other spots in the team, so you can add either different sources of different types of damage or simply utility. Similarly to Super Sugofest Uta, of course not at her level, not even close, but you get the point. The next legend is Perospero, who is very similar to Drake. I will also place him in the S tier, but a bit under Drake. And the main reason for that is that Drake can provide an attack boost, and if your captain is specific classes, then he can also provide chain boundaries, while Perospero provides chain boundaries, but then in order for you to get his second boosting ability, the base attack boost, you need to already have chain boundaries. So essentially, either use another unit for chain boundaries or Perospero twice, while Drake doesn't need to be twice in the crew to offer his maximum potential damage-wise. Perospero as captain can also resist special rivers for 10 turns, which is great. He is focusing on striker and driven characters, not striker and powerhouse like Drake, and he can make some slots matching. He can also manipulate slots from his super class, even block ones, into matching, which is great, and also has amazing synergy with the fact that from his special he can great lock our slots. So we can maintain them essentially if we don't hit a great hit for as long as we want in the quest. A big plus is that he can resist special rewind as a crewmate and also provide 2 turns of special cooldown reduction to striker and driven characters. Even though they are similar with Drake, their ranking and their positioning in this tier list can easily change depending on the quest. We have another dual unit next, Crocodile and Doflamingo. They are definitely an S tier unit. They are a very unique legend as well, because from their special, other than the attack boost they can provide to cerebral and driven characters, they also allow us to select 4 specific buffs for already existing boosts the team has. And the list includes an attack buff, an orb buff, a color affinity boosting buff, a status attack buff, a chain lock buff, a chain boost buff, a chain multiplicative buff, and a base attack boost buff. You always will select the attack boost obviously because they provided, and after that you have 3 more options, which is not necessary by the way. You can select 1 more, up to 4, but not necessarily 4 buffs, and per buff the crew loses 25% of their maximum health, which can also be great in situations where you need to drop your HP under a specific amount to either gain better stats from your captain's ability, your ship's ability, or even gain access to some superclass effects. Maybe even meet specific special requirements. They can even actually help you release units from confusion, which is awesome. Very decent captain for cerebral and driven units as well, so overall a great Kizuna legend. Reiju is up next, and I will place her, I think around the middle of S tier is good for her. She has decent utility because she can remove 7 turns of threshold paralysis and poison completely with her special, then she can manipulate slots to tandem, and she can also remove 10 turns of burn from her captain ability, which is not the best, but I guess it exists. She also makes specific type slots into TND as captain, makes RCV and TND slots beneficial, and then as far as boosting goes, she can provide a color affinity boost from her super typing for 3 turns as well, so it can be carried over through stages and help evade intimidation. She can also inflict enemies with poison pink for 99 turns, but that does not go through immunity, so have that in mind. And she can also provide a conditional attack boost against all poison types, so if you can actually poison the enemy, she's a great unit to actually use, and 7 turns of removal is nothing to sleep on. Her utility, if you do need it, is exceptional. The next legend is Ain. I will also place her in the S tier over Reiju. The reason I won't place Ain or Reiju over the chain boundary providing units here in Perospero and Drake is because I believe these two fulfill their specific niche better, and you are way more likely to use them as captain if a quest has special rewind in order to resist it, or maybe even as a crewmate if you need the chain boundaries. While for Ain and Reiju their utility is great, but if full immunity is present, you are definitely going to consider other units as well, because simply enough they lose out on their maximum potential. Ain is definitely in a better spot than Reiju though. She can provide burn or apply burn to the enemy and also increase damage taken, but they don't go through immunity, obviously. She can provide an ore boost for shooter and cerebral units for 2 turns, which is definitely good, damage reduction shield for 3 turns, and from her super type ability, she can manipulate slots, not through block though, and then provide an attack boosting buff and a color affinity boosting buff. Ain is definitely a strong unit, can be a great captain as well, especially if you want to build around shooters. The next Kizuna legend is Otama, and I will easily place her at the top of S tier. I considered placing her in the double S tier, but there is a single reason why I don't do that. Otama can remove 7 turns of bind and despair. If she is captain though, she cannot resist the debuffs, and for despair that is fine, she gets despaired, we activate her special, we remove despair. But if she gets binded as captain, we cannot activate her special to remove the bind, meaning we need to use another bind remover. And that is a pretty big disadvantage for her as captain. And her value is great as captain because from her super type, she ignores immunity, applies defense reduction, and then also provides a conditional attack boost. On top of that, she allows overhealing, which I think becomes more important as time goes on, especially with all of the pain starting appearing, because we only have one unit in the game that can actually deal with pain, and the overhealing here is great because she has so many different ways of healing in her kit. She can also manipulate slots and increase already existing boosts. And finally, we have the Tobi Roppo, who I will also place in the S tier. To be honest, at first when this legend came out I thought they were pretty underwhelming, but they do have some really strong points. Well, first of all, they can remove 10 turns of damage reduction. On top of that, if you do have a color affinity boost, that is when this legend's potential and great side actually comes out, because if they can only be a color affinity booster, they are A tier. But if you already can get a color affinity boost and then use their special to get the 2 turn 2.5 times attack boost and the 1.8 times of a chain boost for 2 turns as well, then they are for sure strong. They can also manipulate slots into Wano, apply increased damage taken, which unfortunately doesn't go through immunity though, and finally also increase the damage output of specific slots if your captain's orb is Wano or Semla. They actually work exceptionally well in combination with Super Tandem Queen, who can remove 6 turns of threshold and defense up and then also provide a color affinity boost. They are just an amazing combination, and Queen also allows them to get access to their super type ability. If you do have Queen in your box, this legend's value definitely increases. That is everything I had to say though. What do you think about the tier list? Tell me in the comments down below. Do you agree or disagree with specific placements? You can also check my Treasure Map Legend tier list video by clicking the video on the left, and don't forget to subscribe for more One Piece Treasure Cruise content. As always, thank you so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.